Hello, everyone. So, as you know, I've been streaming a lot of Grand Arena matches and I've been pre recording them and uploading them, but I've never do any live streaming. And live streaming is when the audience actually gets to ask questions and the streamer can respond back with their answers. It becomes very interactive. So, I've never had a chance to answer back to people except in the comment section of my videos. So, buddy of mine, Indigo, he has a Discord server, and he's got some good Grand Arena videos as well that you should check out. And his patrons, they compiled a list of questions. And what I'm doing right now in this video is I'm going to be going through those questions and answering them. So this is my way of being semi-interactive with the community, and just answering questions on some burning topics or some interesting thoughts that people have. So just wanted to give my thoughts on that. So a lot of this video might be just me rambling on some random thoughts, but a lot of the questions are really interesting. So I think it'll be interesting, this video. Okay, so I'm going to start off the Q&A with a couple of questions from Indigo himself. First question is, have you come across a reliable counter for Shakti clones outside of the usual CLS, Treya, Padme, Revens? So these are the top teams to take down almost any other team. Um, but what I've really found useful to answer this question is geos. Now I've been using geos against these guys, the clones and team, for a long time. I mean, in a lot of my Grand Arena videos, I have a double Zeta Geonosian Brood Alpha, and I think having the second Zeta on Brood Alpha, Leadership Zeta, really helps because what this ends up doing is it gives extra offense to each Geonosians for each buffed enemy, and the clones are buffed almost all the time. Especially if Shakti has a lead Zeta, they're almost always going to have retribution. So this really increases the offense on the Geonosians, and you end up dealing tons of damage. Even Brute by himself deals tons of damage on each counter, and the clones don't really have a buff immunity, so Brute is always going to be taunting and going to be bearing the bulk of the attack from the clones. So this I found to be a really reliable counter. Apart from that, it's really tough if you don't go with any of the meta teams, because the clones are really such a strong faction, especially fully Zeta, that it's going to be tough. Maybe something with locked healing immunity, maybe JTR with IPD could maybe burn through fives fast enough, but and apply target lock to prevent buff generation. But I've never really tried it, so this is just theory crafting. Maybe crew with Watt might be a good idea as well. Watt would give crew the protection buff, the protection tech, and have crew constantly taunting. And Rex's big annihilate ability is not going to do any damage on crew at all, just because of crew's reduced intake of damage on health based percentage effects. So those are a couple of thoughts that I have. I don't think Wampa would be that effective because the days would get cleansed right away, and yeah, Wampa would be taken out pretty easily. But yeah, it's a tough team to go against. Just because they don't rely on debuffs and they rely on their own buffs, and they have a lot of inbuilt offense. So clones are definitely a lot very very tough. Next question from Indigo: what are the pros and cons of Rex lead versus Shakti lead clones? Now, Shakti lead obviously, there's a ton of immediate benefit. Everyone gets tons of speed, plus 35 speed even without the Zeta. And with the Zeta, they recover health and protection when they attack out of turn, which they'll be doing all the time if they have retribution. So it's something like a Cody lead mixed with tons of speed. And this is great to use on offense, in my opinion, just because you on offense you get a huge speed advantage and you get ahead of your opponent, and you're able to at least get your whole team of five people to go before the your opponents, and that in itself gives you a huge amount of advantage on offense. On defense, it might not be that strong, just because even though the team might get an initial boost in speed, AI under AI control, the speed generation, the TM generation is only going to be in the beginning part when the initial speed bump is given. But under a Rex lead, the speed generation, the turn meter generation is going to be almost constant because anytime the enemy crits, and every single team has got crit ability, anytime that they crit, they're going to get 15% turn meters, and other allies will get half that amount. So the team is constantly going to be going. In my opinion, Rex leadership is one of the best universal leaderships in the game, factionless and really good. Um, in addition, the clone trooper allies also get about 40% max health, the 501st clone troopers, and they only get 15% more health in case of Shakti lead. So there's definitely more health over here in this case. And if you mod fives for health, completely health primaries, get him 60 health mods everywhere, you could get with 40% extra health bonus, you could get fives really tanky. And that and with the inbuilt defense that fives has, he'll be really tough to take out. And if you plug in someone like Barris in there with your clones under Rex lead, and with fives modded completely for health, it'll be a really tough to get rid of fives before Rex's Annihilate comes up. So in my opinion, Rex is definitely the better lead, especially if you're keeping it on defense, because the enemy is constantly going to be critting and making your team go fast. All right, next question. Is there any? This question is from Bro. Is there any arena value in Django's separatist tag, and does he have a place amongst the seps in Grand Arena or TW? And I'm going to combine this question with another question from Uncle Chow. What's the best use of separatists in Grand Arena and TW? Should we go in with one super team like General Grievous, Nuke, Magma, B2, B1, or should we split them up to make two very strong teams? And what are some sample comps? So it's a question around separatists, and the standard separatist squad, which everyone usually goes with, is they go with all five separatist droids on defense, either Grievous or and B1, B2, Magna Guard, and Droideka, or they replace Droideka with Newt. And for those guys who have Watt already, they sometimes replace Newt and Droideka with Watt. That's the standard defensive comp, and then you go with all the five Geonosians as the other comp. And if you decide to do that, then the third option, obviously the separatists that you have left are, if you decide to go with a pure droid squad with Grievous, the separatists you have left is Newt, Dooku, Watt, and then you can put Django in there with them, and then take another tank in from another faction. That will enable Dooku to hide everyone except the tank, and Watt is going to give protection up to the tank, and Newt is going to spread extortion like crazy, and Django is going to act as a damage dealer because in a Grievous squad, Grievous is the main damage dealer. You've got couple of good damage dealers in a Geo separatist squad, but in this squad you need a really tough damage dealer, and Django really does very well under Newt lead, just because of the extra burning that he does. Each debuff gives 20% max health reduction. Similarly, even on the Dooku lead, Django would do really well just because these guys get tons of offense, stacking offense up to 50% every time the enemy goes below health. So a good example of a team could be you take Dooku in there as lead, put in Sith Trooper or any other characters who hit under health, and then very soon you'll have the team, all separatists in the team, ramped up to full 50% offense, and that is going to have a real big impact on Django. And you can see over here Django with his unique. He's going to start with Bounty Hunter's Resolve if he's under a separatist leader. At the start of battle, let's see, where's his payout? Yeah, that's where his payout. His payout says that if he's under a separatist leader, he gains damage immunity for 2 turns, which can't be dispelled, and plus 50% offense. So under Newt or Dooku, Django is anyway going to get plus 50% offense, but under Dooku, once 5 enemies fall below health, he's going to get 100% extra offense, which is going to make him hit extremely hard. So there's definitely a lot of value in Django in there. In addition, another variation that you can go with, if you're going with General Grievous with Newt, you you could also do put Wat Tambor under the Geonosians and replace Sunfac, because you really don't need Sunfac in the team if Brute is doing a really good job of tanking, and especially with Wat in there, Brute is going to be tanking all the time. So if you take Sunfac out and put Sunfac under a Dooku, Django, Sith Trooper, Droideka team, for example, that would be really good as well, because you'll have a Separatist tank, and Dooku, when he does his hiding ability, the stealthing ability, everyone will be hidden except for Sunfac, who will be countering all the time and dispelling buffs. So that could be a pretty powerful team as well. And again, Sith Trooper to hit under health and get Django ramped up to 100% offense extremely fast, and Droideka, who also would be help to one shot a character whenever he comes out of his damage immunity turn. So that's another example of a good team that it could use there. Okay, next question is from Ekel. What's the best use for Nest, tenacity build or speed and damage? Now, when I used to keep Nest on offense, I used to go with a tenacity build for Nest, because that's really best when you're going up against teams that you want to solo. For example, Evox to prevent days from landing, or if you want to go against a Basti team, Basti lead team, where you want to prevent getting stunned. That's again a case for a high tenacity Nest. So I think if you're planning to keep Nest on offense and go solo, then high tenacity build is really useful. But these days I've been keeping Nest on offense, and Nest on offense, I typically tend to go with a high speed option. So I put a good speed set on her. I get her about 296 speed or something like that. And she's really good as a plug and play fifth to turn a C team into an A team. So as an example, you can see in my current Grand Arena, I put in my Nest with Evox, and so I took out Logray because Nest is a source of days over here, and I put in Evox with Nest, and that team got me 3 holes. So it's basically something which converts a C team. Typically, troopers would have taken down Evox for 60 points. It converts a C team into an A team. So that's and that's only possible if Nest is extremely fast and can go first and reduce turn meter of the enemy team, and allows your defensive team to go and get some turns in. So that is a good place to put Nest. All right. Next question is from Relo. Which squad do you see Wat fitting under? Now I have quite a few. I made a video a while back on Wat, and I have quite a few suggestions on some Wat teams. Essentially, I won't go through all these teams in details. You can check out my video for more details, but I'll probably leave a link to that. But what Wat can do is you basically have 3 different categories of teams that you can fit Wat under. One is anything utilizing a Separatist and Dark Side Droid synergy. And the first couple of teams on this list is basically that. You can use him either with the Grievous squad, or you can use him in a Dooku Django hybrid squad. Both these are great because there's dark side droids that he can recover in these teams. There's Separatists that get extra protection recovery with the health buff. So there's tons of Separatist synergy over here, and Wat can revive all of the Separatists as well. So that's the first kind of team, which revolves around Separatists and dark side droids. The second kind of team is utilizes Wat's dark side, the dot synergy. So Kath teams which inflict tons of dots, Wat does great with those as well. He can pop those dots at any time with the second special, and he can end up applying dots himself anytime someone with tech goes. So that ends up healing these guys quite a lot as well. So there's definitely good synergy over there. And Zalbar ends up getting the taunt, which is great. The second dot-based synergy, which I haven't been that impressed with, is Vader lead with Wampa and Wat. Not much. I tried it out 1 or 2 times, but it's not as impressive as the Kath team. I think the synergy of Wat over there is much better. So that's the second kind of team, the dot-based synergy team that you can use Wat with. And the third is basically any other kind of team. Wat is a great plug-and-play character. You can I've given some examples of some team that you can just plug and play him in. It's he makes any team really, really good. So definitely something to keep in mind. All right. Next question is from Go Cubs. if General Annie comes, do you see it worthwhile pulling Ahsoka from Padme? And if so, would Shakti work in a place in the Padme lineup? Now, that's an interesting question. I mean, if General Annie comes, obviously we'll have to see the kit to see where he synergizes most with. I'm assuming it would be mostly with the 501st. In that case, you would have Rex or General Annie be the lead of 501st. Um, I don't know if it depends on what kind of synergy General Annie might have with with Ahsoka to see if really Ahsoka needs to be pulled from the Padme team, because right now I'm loving Ahsoka and the Padme team, and I don't see anything pulling me from there, pulling her from there. But Shakti does work quite well in the Padme lineup as well. I've seen a lot of videos of folks just placing Shakti in there, and she serves as an additional heal, additional gives a lot of interesting buffs based on the ability, the tag of the attacker. So it's an interesting thing, but I really don't. Maybe once I get her to G12, I might end up using Padme over there, Padme and Shakti together. But as of now, I think Shakti still has more synergy with the clones as opposed to Padme, just because of all the retribution that she gives, and all the special buffs to the clones. So that's my thought. I think I would still place Shakti in a clones team, and maybe replace the slot for the fourth clone with General Annie. That would be my thought. But obviously, this is all conjecture. We have to see the actual kit to know. Next question is from Go Cubs. What are your thoughts on the Zeta Order for the 501st faction? So 501st. Let's go to the faction and see what we have over here. So I'm excluding Shakti from this because she doesn't have the 501st tag, and even if I include Shakti in this team, I would do her unique Zeta first before her lead Zeta, because in my opinion, as I mentioned, Rex is a better lead. But from these four, I would. I mean, if you've already built out your Galactic Republic team under Padme, which should be your first priority, then you would have already Zeta Ahsoka. If not, then I would Zeta Ahsoka first, because she is great value. Her assist on any ally using a special ability is extremely useful, whether in a clones team or a Shakti team, or a clones team or a Padme team. So I would do that Zeta first. The Rex Zeta, I think, would be a close second, especially if you're using the team on offense. Because if you're using the team on offense, you're not relying on fives dying, and so the five Zeta is. I'm talking about the tactical awareness Zeta. That is really useful if fives is if someone else in the team dies and fives ends up taking the death for them and giving them the stats. So if you're using them on offense, you would do your best to prevent the team from dying. So if you use them on offense, fives will be taunting most of the time, or in case you use someone like R2 in the team, R2 would be hiding everyone except fives. So you're not really going to utilize the fives sacrifice Zeta as much if you're using them on offense. So if you're planning to use the clones on offense, I would say Rex lead is the second Zeta that I would go with. And then third would definitely be fives. I would do both of fives next, starting with tactical awareness, and then Domino Squad, and then I would go with Echo. Echo Zeta is really great against if you're planning to take clones against Jedi Knight Revan, for example, where there are tons of evades and all of that. But it's a fringe Zeta. I would put it as a low priority, but definitely Ahsoka, Rex, then both of fives, and then Echo. That would be my order. The only exception I would make in this case would be maybe in General Grievous, if you're going against General Grievous. Actually, even in that case, I would do Rex first and then fives second Zeta, because those two are really important if you're going against Grievous, because Grievous teams, Rex's Zeta allows you to reset the cooldown on all the clone allies, and Echo's EMP grenade is especially useful against Grievous teams. So this has a 4-turn cooldown, and if you're able to get that reduced by 1 using a Rex's Zeta, then that is really helpful against a Grievous team. So I would go with that first because you really need to stun and control the team. The second Zeta I would go for the Grievous team would be the 5's tactical awareness, because invariably Grievous's AoE is going to take out either Rex or Echo, and if your 5's is beefy and modded for offense and all that gets transferred over to Rex and Echo, and they become almost invincible, especially if you mod 5's for defense. So even against a Grievous team, I think having Rex Zeta first and then 5 Zeta would be helpful. Okay, so next question is from Rum Runner. With the rework of the Separatists and the clones and the release of Padme, we started seeing some mashups of some traditional faction squads, and it's challenging to juggle them between offense and defense in Grand Arena. So in your opinion, what are the top mashups for Grand Arena Championships, offense and defense? Now, if you've been following my videos, you're already aware of the kind of teams that I love to mash up. I love to these days I've been loving Nest with the Evox. I like Shore with Bounty Hunters. There's Watt with Bounty Hunters that you can plug in. Nest with Bounty Hunter is great as well. Nest with CLS is pretty great too. Clones are again the 501st and the Shakti is again another place where you can add a lot of plug and play value. You have the 3 501st clones with Shakti, and then the 5th you can put basically anyone in. It's really great. You have the Scoundrel Squad, which and 5th can be a really good. Nest plugs in very well over here as well. And this you have to think of all your mashup teams in terms of duos and trios. And I'd made a video a while back, a few months ago, on duos and trios and how to think about all your teams in terms of duos and trios. So, for example, Mission and Zalbar, great duo. You can use them together and in plug and play under almost anyone. You've got Rex Wampa used to be a great duo as well. You've got the 3 501st clones who are a great trio. Obviously, the Sith trio is top of the list as well. So you have to think in terms of duos and trios, and then see whether they have synergy in mashing them up. So that's how I would think about cross faction synergy. Next question is from Darth Kiwi. How would you prioritize G13 for these tunes? So it's listed 4 tunes over there: Nest, Daka, Rex, and R2. Now, in my opinion, I think Rex would be the first G13 from all of these, especially if you're already building out a clone squad, which you should be, given that light side territory battles is coming up. Rex, because Rex is by nature slightly squishy, and like you can see over here, my Rex with all his current mods and at G13 is only at 40k health and 33k protection. So you really need him at G13 to get him a little bit more survivable. Plus, the main reasons that people get to a higher gear level is either a speed bump or a general stat bump like health or something like that. And in the case of Rex, it benefits him greatly in both these areas, because Rex, you really want him to be fast and go first. So the 10 speed bump is really useful for him. And also stat bump. Now his leadership gives 40% health to him. So any health that he has, 41k in this example, 40% of that would be 16k. So his health would be close to 56-60k, which is reaching the levels of survivability that you really should have. And it becomes really difficult to take him out at that point of time. And especially if you have 5 Zeta and you kill him, then Rex becomes a monster to take out, and you can't afford to leave him lying around. So in my case, Rex definitely for the first G13. The second one I would say from the list is going to be Daka. So Daka is another one that I have currently G13, and her health bumps up from 40k to about 90k. It's amazing. The bump that Daka gets, and especially if you have the Zeta on her, I would prioritize Daka quite ahead of your list of other things to do. It really transforms the Night Sisters into a really tough team, and with the Zeta on Daka and the G13, you can take out even a General Grievous team with about 80 to 90% success rate. So I've been pretty happy with my Daka Zeta as well. The third one I would go with is Nest in that list. Nest, again, with G13 and especially with Relics coming out now, you can get a health pretty high, extremely high. And a high health Nest with all the health steal that she has is can get really irritating to take out. You'll need something special for that. Um, so Nest would be next on the list. And R2, I would say, is lower priority. Um, there's not as much benefit that R2 gets from speed because you're typically running him with BB8 and he already gets a natural speed bump. And not much benefit from health as well because R2's health is already pretty high. And if you run him with the, um, let's see, my R2 is at G12 and his health is already at 43k, which is more than Rex's health at G13. And he gets, if you're running him with Rebels, he gets a health bonus as well. And if you're we have 10% max health for each rebel ally, and if you're running him with C3PO, translation gives another 30% stack of health. So you really don't need to get him to G13 for that health bump. It does help, but he's not there for the health. All right, so that would be my order for those four tunes. Next question, also by Darth Kiwi. Which tune do you think is the most regrettable investment one could have made? And he's given two options: Visa Smar or Fulcrum. Now, these are interesting two choices because I've regretted both these characters as well. Um, Now, Visa Smart, I would say, is less regrettable. Fulcrum, I think, would be more regrettable in my opinion. Let me show you my Fulcrum. Now, Fulcrum, the reason I regret her more because Visa, at least you can, I used her for a while under the Sith raid. I ended up giving her a Zeta, which I think is a waste right now, but at least I ended up using her for a significant portion of time in the Sith raid in P1 before C3PO came out. But nowadays I don't use visas at all on offense. But Fulcrum I think is even more of a waste because I farmed her, but I really never geared her or used her for anything at all. Maybe she has some niche uses, but I just have her at Gear 8, and I really ended up wasting a lot of because she's only farmable from the ship currency shop, and ended up wasting a lot of currency over here getting her to 7 star when I could have been buying Zetas. So that was a real waste for me. I think the Ahsoka Tano Fulcrum. I think I haven't done the math on how much currency exactly wasted over here, but if you assume 300 um, 300 to max her, 300 by 5 is about 60. So 60 into 400 means I've spent about 24,000 of these currency mats, which is a little more than a Zeta. Yep, which is 20 Zeta mats and 24 Zeta mats. So it's basically like wasting a Zeta. So I wasted a Zeta on Ahsoka, buying her from there, and I wasted a Zeta on Visa Smar, which I no longer use anymore. So both are equally bad, but I think Ahsoka is a little worse. All right. Next question from Wingnut. Do you have any suggestion for a Grand Arena team that can be set on defense, which is unusual and maybe underestimated? Something looking for something for most of the squad is already built, but it uses a tune that most people don't have built. So I would say placing any one of these superstar fifth plugin character with a really weak team can be underestimated. So, for example, you take the 4 weak Ewoks, you put Watt in there, or you put Nest in there, or you put a Wampa in there with the 4 typically weaker characters that you really are pretty easy to take out. That could be really underestimated. Or you keep your troopers on defense with a tank like Shore or Stormtrooper, and then keep Watt in there as well. Watt is going to end up giving the taunting buff to one of the tanks, Shore or Storm, and every time that person takes the turn, they end up recovering 30% protection. And troopers already have tons of way of recovering protection as well. If you take a look at range is constantly giving protection up to everyone, so that whatever tank you have in there is constantly going to be taunting and creating a havoc. while the rest of your troopers are going away at your team. So that could be another squad which could be underestimated. So essentially, the formula is go with four people that people typically underestimate or don't really take out. You use a weak team to take out, and then put in a really strong character with them. That's exactly what I did in my current Grand Arena. The Karth team is typically a very weak team. It can be taken out by First Order, by Evox even if you have decent Evox. And in this case, I put Malak in with the weak Karth team, and he instantly transformed the C team to an A plus team because my opponent was able to take out all of my board except for this team. So that's one way of making a C team and an A team. All right. The next question is from Dinocon V. When making mixed faction or otherwise unorthodox two teams, how do you figure out what to use or try out? Do you look for similar abilities, tags, etc.? So I have what I did was and this is a video that I created a few months ago as well. Maybe I'll keep the link on top of the video over here. But what I'd done was I had created a bunch of tabs in my squad arena, in my squad templates, squad management templates, with basically things which will enable me to mix and match. So I've got a tab for universal leaders, for example. I've got Rex. I've got leaders which give a damage boost. Boba and Dengar and Sid, and these are all universal leaders that you can use across factions. So when you think about mixing and matching teams like that, you have to think about you're moving away from faction synergy, which typically a lot of teams have, and you're moving more into kit synergy. So you're trying to look at what aspects of the kit synergize across factions. So, for example, Vader and Wampa, they don't have any faction in common, but they have dot synergy. Or the Karth team and Wampa or Vader, they all have dot synergy. Or you have, excuse me, you have, let's see, you have maybe Droideka that you can use with or Droideka or any of the droids that you can use under JTR. Now, none of them share a resistance track apart from the two droids, but there's kit synergy over there because BB-8 naturally speeds up the other droids, and that's why for a long time JTR was really the best droid leader. So that's what I mean by kit synergy. So when you look at kit synergy, you look at things like you want a complete package. So you want a good leader. You want some, especially on offense, you want some good control characters. You want stunners. So I've created a list of all stunners that that you can use. You can put together in a team. You want characters, if you want to really control characters, you want characters who can daze. The characters in the first line, for example, are mass dazers, and then you've got single target dazers as well. You want characters who can dispel. There's tons of characters that you can use over here that you can mix and match, and especially if you're taking against a team that you want that have a lot of buffs and automatic buffs, and you want dispel available all the time. You can use characters like these. The first row over here is characters who can master spell. That's a pretty useful skill to have as well. And then especially on defense, putting some revivers in there can make things pretty irritating for the opponent. Tenacity down is a very useful ability to have, especially in this age when almost every single character has tenacity up. So mixing and matching these characters with the characters who can apply debuffs, that will really maximize your use of tenacity down. So that's basically how I like to think about mixing and matching. And if you want more details on this, check out the video link that I've kept up there. All right. Next question from Danacon V again. When attacking, how do you know if your usual counter is overkill or too weak? What do you look for to know? Okay, I need something different. So here also I've kept another video on what I like to call the ORC strategy, which is outspeed, reach, and control. So what I usually want to do is if I see a team and it's either a team which I don't know what to take against, or it's some new form of team which utilizes multiple factions, something I haven't faced. Now, how do you decide whether what you're taking is overkill or not? So I like to think about it in three terms. ORC, which is ORC, outspeed, reach, and control. The first question I ask is, can I outspeed the opponent? So I can take an example from my current Grand Arena. So let's say I want to take something against the bounty hunter team. So the very first question I have is, can I outspeed the team? And I obviously see that there's Django lead, so he's going to give 30 speed. Then I go to Bosk and see that his speed is 274. So with the bonus, he's going to be at 304. And then if I want to take my troopers against it, I need to make sure that my Stark is able to outspeed at least Bosk, and then my troopers will have a good time. So that's the very first question you need to ask. Can you outspeed the other team? The second is R, which stands for reach. Can you reach the damage dealers and the most dangerous characters in the team? And by that, what I mean is, do you have characters that can go around taunt, like Boba or Django, or do you have characters who can dispel, so that the taunt gets dispelled, and you can reach the weaker but more dangerous characters, or things like that. So anything that you can do to reach the most dangerous characters, if you have that, then that's a good sign. And the third thing, C, that's control. Can you control the team on that you're facing on defense? And by control, I showed the bunch of tabs out there. Basically, things like stunning, dazing them, increasing their cooldowns, or basically just keeping them in under inaction, like with a fracture or an isolate. So see if you have whatever of offense you're taking in. See if you have enough of those control factors on offense. All right, so that's basically that question. The third question from DinoCon V is, do you value the ability to remove opposing banners on defensive teams? For example, are squads with AoE abilities or instant kills more appealing to set on defense because they can burn banners, or would you just rather go in with a really strong team? So I would say that there's two answers to this. If you're It depends on what you're playing at. If you've kept a relatively lighter defense, and you're planning to, if you think that your opponent is going to play the efficiency game, it's going to one shot everything of yours, then it's and if you want to do the same thing as well, then it's better to go in with teams which can reduce banners, lots of AoEs, revives, and counters, those kind of things. But if you're setting a defense in such a way that you want to prevent your opponent from clearing you, like say you set a strong Darth Revan team, or if you keep both the Ravens on defense, or you keep a really strong Separatist squad and you think that your opponent might not have enough to take it out, or if you decide to exhaust his Treya in the front and keep a Padme team at the back. So if you use strategies like that, where you want to prevent your opponent from clearing, or you want to have them have multiple battles, in those cases stronger teams are definitely much better. So that's basically what I would do. All right, next interesting questions from Mikaias. First question is, would you like to join the Death Star Designers Alliance? Answer to that is, thanks for the offer, but I'm currently extremely happy with my current guild, the New Jedi Alliance, the New Jedi Order. The second question is, are you sure? Yes, I'm pretty sure. Third question is, are you sure you are sure? Yes, I'm pretty sure. And the final question is, okay, fine. Have you considered any experimentation splitting up crew, First Order officer, and Kylo to try to slot them in other teams for good use? And if so, what was successful and what wasn't? So that's an interesting question, because these guys, of all the factions that you can think of, the First Order is one faction that you can definitely split all four or five members and have them do really well in other squads. Crew is a great. Let's actually go to the First Order squad. Crew is a great plug and play character, and he's been used in a lot of places as a fifth, as a counter to Darth Revan teams, just because he's immune to health percentage based health reductions. And crew can be used. Crew and Kylo by themselves can be used pretty effectively in a Malak cleanup squad. And not just a Malik cleanup squad, but in a Darth Revan team. But even if you have a Malik as a fifth under any other team, any other weak team, and you don't want to waste a meta squad against that, take Crew and Kylo along with three other characters, and you can cheaply clean up the other guys, and then just a Crew and Kylo can stun and control the lone Malik pretty well. And there's healing immunity there. There's double turn stun. You have everything there basically to take a Malik out. First order officer can be used in a General Grievous cleanup team because he has this ability to remove turn meter. And if there's a lone General Grievous around, typically what you do is you treat him like the Rancor. You take in a Jin with a lot of turn meter reducing tunes. So first order officer actually fits in great over there to try to take out a lone Grievous. And in general, I think even if you're faced with an opponent who's set a relatively weaker team, Kylo Ren and Mars can by themselves solo weaker teams. So that's another use for them as well. Next question from Mikaias. What uses have you found for Wampa's second Zeta, which is the healing immunity, the one that inflicts healing immunity? Now, that's the Howling Rage, not the Howling Rage, the Furious Foe Zeta. You inflict healing immunity for 2 turns on enemies which can't be evaded. Unfortunately, it can be resisted. It's not that great of a Zeta. I did it because I love the Wampa, but there are a few places where it could be pretty useful. I typically take my Wampa against Night Sister teams with Basti, and after a Night Sister team take a while to get down just because of the 2 free revives. So getting Wampa in there and having him do the healing immunity, that really helps to prevent the sisters from healing up because they've got tons of healing. The sisters, Asajj, Daka, Zombie, and once, especially under Asajj lead, once they heal up, they immediately get 50% turn meter once somebody damages them because of Asajj's lead. So preventing that heal is really effective for controlling Asajj and the sisters. So against against Night Sisters, I've really found this Zeta to be pretty useful. The second place that you can use this Zeta is pretty useful is if you're taking Wampa against a Karth team. Now, Wampa is a natural counter even to a Karth team. He applies daze to everyone, and he applies dots. And Karth team really doesn't have good cleanses apart from Juhani, and typically a lot of Karth teams don't run with Juhani. So this guy can attack the Karth teams pretty well. And once he gets, and Karth teams also last a while because of Zalbar and his tankiness. So once this guy reaches the Furious Foe Zeta, once he is able to inflict a healing immunity, then in that case, what happens is Karth teams stop healing on dots. And that is another way to effectively control them because that will prevent Zalbar's heals and all the other heals on dots that they have. So I think in those 2 cases, this ability has been pretty useful. Let's see. Let's go to the next question. The next question is from Relo on the General Grievous Nuke squad. I think it can be made to use Droidica in the 5th slot. So in the General Grievous Nuke squad, I typically use either IG88 or HK47 lead with General Grievous, and the compulsory members are T3, M4, and BB8. You can't avoid either of these guys, and you need a 5th, and the 5th is what Relo is having the question about. Do we use I currently use IPD, but do we use IPD or can we use Droidica in that slot? Now, I really find IPD useful because that's the most effective way of the Nuke squad, because especially with the Zeta, he prevents anyone from gaining any buffs, and typically you want to prevent Sith Trooper or Malik from gaining a taunt. So having that IPD present over there really reduces on your uncertainty and increases the reliability of the Nuke team. So I have a tough time thinking that you can get rid of IPD and get in Droidica to make the team more reliable. Droidica doesn't really add much to the team, apart from just being another droid who can die easily. I think the other droids that I've mentioned add much more value to the team. HK-47 and IG-88 give a critical chance boost to Grievous, which really helps him land those critical hits. T3M4 obviously is needed because of the Zeta, which gives a damage boost. BB-8 is needed for the speed bump, and IPD is needed for the target lock and preventing the taunts. Sometimes people use a B1 battle droid instead of IPD, which is great as well because the enemy DR team, the Darth Revan team, ends up going after B1, and then that gives a little more time for Grievous to go ahead and clean up the team. So I would say B1 would be a better option for a replacement rather than Droideka, but Droideka really doesn't add much to that team. All right, so that was it. I think they've got one last question, which is there a use for Droideka outside of the General Grievous or Separatist squad? So I think that is basically what the previous question also was trying to get at, which is if I decide to take Droideka away from the Grievous squad, which uses Newt, where else can I use Droideka? Now, if you decide to use like if you go for the Geos and you decide to use Sunfac as a tank in your other Separatist squad with Dooku, for example, then you can bring in Droideka under the Geos, the rest of the Geos, especially if Droideka has the Zeta, which calls assist, which has a 35% chance of calling assist every time. Um, yeah, 35% chance to assist whenever another Separatist ally uses an ability. So the Geos are going tons of times. They're constantly gaining turn meter. They're constantly going and attacking the enemy, reducing the enemy's turn meter. So with each time that the Geos go and attack with their basic, each of the Geos assists counts as a chance for Droideka to assist with the Zeta. So Droideka actually can do pretty well in a Geo squad if you replace Sunfac with him. I think that's Sunfac or any other, maybe Poggle or somebody else like that. Anyone, because he'll end up assisting quite a ton, and I think that could make it a pretty useful squad. But obviously that requires it to have a Zeta on Droideka. And the other way that you can use it obviously is under JTR. JTR is before the droid reworks and all of that. JTR was the best droid leader, no doubt about that. So if you decide to use BB-8 and R2 under JTR, add Droideka as a third droid, and use another resistance member or another droid, and you've got a really solid team over there. So those are the obvious options. There's another one which I really don't have developed, is if you go with a pure droid team on the IG-88 lead or something like that, and you go with a Java engineer, a really sped up Java engineer. Uh, Droideka might do a decent job over there as well. So it's really up to you to see which place he can fit in. All right. So those were all the questions that I had. We are already 48 minutes into the video, but I wanted to spend a little time to talk a little bit about relics now that relics are out, and we've got tons of videos already on people talking about relics and how overpowered they are, and what characters to prioritize and all that. So I'm not going to go a ton into all of that. I'm just going to give some of my thoughts on the implications of relics. Obviously, its attackers have gained a ton with relics, and Anakin, Han, Marauder, Grandmaster Yoda, their offense is through the roof. Even characters like B1, Wampa, Canderous, whenever we get around to G13ing them, it's going to be amazing. The second category of characters who've gotten a really big boost is health-based characters. You've obviously got the healers like Daka, Jolie, and Barris, who got tremendous health benefits when you get up to level 7, almost 80 to 100% bump up in health, which basically doubles their health from the G13 levels, which is scary to think about. I mean, technically speaking, Daka can probably go up to 160, 170k health if you level her up to level 7. Jolie can get up pretty high as well, probably more than 100, 120k, which is pretty scary. And then you've got characters like Barris. Now Barris gets 100% increase in health, which means at G13 level 7 should probably be close to almost almost 150k health again, and that can get really scary for Barris. And other health-based characters like General Grievous and Vandor, who also do damage based on their health, those guys can get pretty crazy as well. Grievous, obviously, everyone has heard about. Plenty of videos out there about how Grievous is demolishing teams with his AoE. Vandor is another great example as well. Clash put out a video, or he mentioned in some video, where the Vandor Chewie, level 7 Vandor Chewie, was doing 180k of damage on his special, which is insane to think about. So those kind of characters obviously are getting a lot of benefits. So the the main thing is, right now we don't know what is good, what is not. It's best to wait and rather than rushing into gearing or leveling up any one of these characters. The other implication of relics is easier territory battles. Now, obviously, your PVE battles itself become easier because your character stats increase, and what used to be tougher characters are now easier to take out. But also from in terms of more GP for deployment, so teams are going to find it much easier to guilds are going to find it much easier to go and complete these the stars, just because immediately the whole guild has got a huge bump up in GP. With relics, I think people have bumped the GP up from 50k to 100k if they've done a decent amount of relics. So it's imagine that across 50 people in a guild, your GP would your guild GP would essentially rise by a few million just like that, which would really help in completing some stars. So that's the other implication. And then comes the implication on Grand Arena Championships, which is the area that I'm going to be focusing on. Now, matchmaking, there's been a lot of issues around matchmaking and lot of conversation around this, especially with the new championship session when they came out. What used to be really, really easy matchmaking for me before became extremely tough matchmaking after Grand Arena Championships came out, just because the top 65 to 80 toons GP used to be taken into consideration. And for those characters like me who have a lot of Zetas, I've got 83 Zetas, for example, and each Zeta adds about 2k of GP, 2 to 2.5k. So that really, even though I did not have as many G13 or G12 characters as my opponents, the fact that I had so many Zetas and ended up with me getting matched up with people with 20 less Zetas than me from Team Instinct, for example, with way better mods and way more G13 and all of that. So I felt that at least in the last couple of seasons of Grand Arena Championships, my matches have been really, really tough. Maybe a little tougher than what it should have been, just because of the over-reliance on Zetas. And unfortunately, the shift to G13 did not really address that, because G13 adds very little GP, so it really doesn't address that as much. But with relics add a ton of GP. Now each level, like level 1, it adds about 700 GP. Level 2 adds about 800, level 3 about 900, and it goes on and so forth till you reach level 7. So essentially, if you do level 1 for 3 of your characters, any 3 characters, that's the equivalent of adding a Zeta. And if you do that for like a bunch of characters, you've immediately added like a bunch of Zetas to your top 85 GP. And obviously your G13 characters are going to be part of your top 65 to 80 characters. So you're instantly adding tons of GP, almost instantaneously. Apart from that, if you get characters to a much higher level, the GP addition is going to really snowball into quite a lot. And the whales and the guys with really, really good rosters are obviously going to go heavy on relics, and that means that at least matchups for me with those kind of people are going to be much reduced, and it's going to be a little more fair, is my assumption. So I'm really thrilled from that perspective that the Grand Arena Championship matchmaking will probably become a little more fair. Whatever did not happen with G13 is going to happen with the relics in terms of matchmaking. So that brings me to my approach on relics and what I'm planning to do with it. Now, I'm not, as you can see over here, I haven't really put relics on any of my characters with the exception of Grievous and Wampa. Wampa, because it's a passion project of mine, I want to get him to gear level, relic level 7 as soon as possible. And Grievous, because no doubt he's the best, most beneficial, the biggest beneficiary of the relics. Not only does his health jump up by about 40%, but at level 7, but his crit chance goes through the roof as well. And especially if you're like me running the Grievous Nuke squad, you know how important crit chance is to that team. He went from 40% to 65% at just level 4, and at level 7 he's probably going to be close to 80%, and you can easily get him to 90%, which makes the team extremely reliable in terms of the nuke squad. So my approach is I'm going to be doing one character at a time after I finish Wampa, obviously, and I'm going to be focusing on Grievous, and I'm going to level up one character at a time. I don't think I'm going to do any of my Sith Empire because I think their meta is almost going to end right now. There are plenty of teams which can beat these guys pretty easily. In fact, these days I'm just climbing with my Grievous Nuke squad. It's way easier than Darth Revan mirror matches. And at the same time, I want to wait to see what new meta comes up so that I can give the right relic levels to my clones, for example, if they become the meta. So a wait and watch approach, I think, is the best strategy at this stage, because it's been a while since we've had new characters being released and a new meta being introduced. So waiting and watching is the best approach at this point. And at the same time, I don't want to go and put a bunch of level 1s on all these guys. My approach is I'm going to go straight to level 5, 6, or 7 of getting a character up to max level. I don't want to put a bunch of 1s, because as I mentioned, putting 3 1s is the equivalent of getting a Zeta, additional Zeta, and that's going to make your matchmaking much tougher as well. So I'm going to focus one character at a time and get them up to 7, and that's also going to force me to wait and force me to save my resources and until the next meta is released. So that's basically going to be my approach in terms of Relic. So that's basically my thoughts on it. I think it's quite exciting. It's definitely going to make battles really, really tough against opponents or characters with really high relic levels. But this game, that's what this game is about: power creep. I mean, you need a certain level of healthy power creep in order to keep the game interesting. Um, but maybe this might have come a little too soon after G13. But yeah, this was inevitable. A gear jump, a stat jump like this was definitely inevitable. So I'm not surprised. All right, so that's it for the video today. It was a 1 hour long video, longer than I wanted it to be, but I think I rambled on for quite a while, gave my thoughts on a lot of things. I hope you guys found it useful if you sat through the whole thing. But if you really like it, then I may do these things again in the future, maybe once a month or something like that. But what I can do is I can take questions from the community. So if you like this format, if you like this style, if you want me to continue doing these, just say ask a bunch of questions in this video itself in the comment section. Just start it off with the comment like question, and then put a colon, and then ask whatever question you have. I'll take a look at it after a month or so. I'll compile all the questions, and then I'll go ahead and make another video with all the questions that you guys have, and it can be any questions that you have, either about the game or about myself or about playing style or anything else like that. So feel free to ask any questions that you have if you feel these kind of videos are interesting. All right. Thanks for taking the time to watch the whole thing, and thanks again to Indigo and his patrons for providing a really good list of interesting questions. And if you're interested, go and definitely go and join Indigo's Discord server. I'll give a link in the video description below. Feel free to go and check that out. All right. Thanks for listening in. I'll talk to you guys later. Take care.